My name is Brandon. I'm 36, live in Texas, and I've always believed in love. Not the fairy tale kind, but the real one. The type where you stick it out with your partner through the messy, unglamorous parts of life. I thought that was what I had with my wife, Rachel. We met in college, fell hard for each other, and got married right after graduation. Back then, we had nothing. Just 2 cheap rings, a shared apartment, and big dreams. I worked my tail off after college, first in sales and later in tech, where I finally started making real money. Rachel, on the other hand, wanted to focus on her art. I respected that. I wanted her to live her dream, and I promised her she wouldn't need to worry about money. So I supported her every single brush, canvas, class, and gallery application, while also building a business that eventually exploded. I co-founded a software company that grew fast. Within 5 years, I was worth 7 figures. Life got real good, or so I thought. I wasn't flashy. I didn't wear gold chains or drive a Lambo. I was more of a boots and jeans guy. Our house was modest, even though I could afford better. I just wanted peace. A loving wife, a quiet home, and maybe some kids down the road. But peace is not what I got. The first red flag came as a whisper, barely noticeable. Rachel started becoming distant. I'd come home, and she'd barely look up from her phone. She'd laugh at texts she wouldn't let me see. Said it was just her cousin from out of town. When I asked which cousin, she'd say, "You've never met him." I let it go. I trusted her. Then one night, I saw her on the phone, whispering in the hallway. I only caught a few words. "Of course I transferred it already. You'll get it by morning." I didn't say anything that night. I just lay in bed pretending to sleep, while the pieces of my brain started coming together like a jigsaw puzzle. Transferred what? To whom? I wasn't crazy. I knew what I heard. The next morning, I acted normal. Kissed her on the forehead, went to the office, but didn't go in. Instead, I parked in a diner across the street and opened my banking app. I had several accounts, joint, personal, business. I began going through them like a detective going through evidence. That's when my stomach dropped. Over the past 4 months, small but steady amounts of money had been moving out of our joint account. Not in a way that was super obvious, $2, $500 here for $1,000 there, but added up, almost $60,000 was gone, and I hadn't spent it. The transfer history led to a name I didn't recognize. Drew Carlson. I didn't know a Drew Carlson, but I was about to, and that's when the twist happened. When my life started spiraling into the kind of nightmare you think only happens in movies. That same afternoon, Rachel sent me a text. Just one line. It said, "Hey, babe, I forgot to mention, I made a donation to a friend's art program. Hope that's okay." I stared at that message for a full minute. Donation? $60,000. What kind of art program needed that much cash? I could feel my hands trembling. I replied, "What's the name of the program?" She didn't respond for hours. When she did, it was vague. Something like, "Oh, it's called Color Bridge, I think. I'll get you more info later." I Googled Color Bridge. It didn't exist. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight. The woman I had trusted with everything, who I supported for years, was lying to me. But instead of confronting her immediately, I made a different choice. I decided to play dumb. I needed more. I needed to know everything. So I started digging. At work the next day, I asked my CFO to help me discreetly review any financial activity that may have linked to personal accounts. I told him I suspected a small accounting issue with Rachel's name attached. He pulled up an internal report and his face twisted with confusion. Brandon, you didn't approve this." He showed me a wire transfer that Rachel had initiated from one of my business accounts, a temporary account I used during a product launch. It was supposed to be inaccessible without my code. She had sent another $15,000 from that account just 2 weeks ago. And guess who it was sent to? Drew Carlson. At this point, I was seeing red, but I still kept cool. I smiled, thanked my CFO, and left the office. I needed a plan, one that wouldn't just expose her, but make sure she paid for what she did. I started looking into who Drew Carlson actually was. It wasn't hard. Turns out he was an influencer. One of those gym guys who posted shirtless photos, did brand promos for supplements, and ran coaching classes online. He had about 35K followers and an ego bigger than Texas. And buried in his tag photos was my wife, Rachel. She was tagged in a photo from his apartment. She was holding a wine glass, wearing my shirt with the caption, #myqueen. I stared at the screen, my jaw locked tight. That same night, Rachel kissed me goodnight like nothing was wrong. That same night, I sat next to her in bed, knowing full well she was betraying me. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to destroy them both, financially, emotionally, and in a way they'd never see coming. But first, I had to set the trap. The next few weeks were the hardest. I had to act normal, pretend everything was fine. I even bought Rachel flowers just to keep her off my scent. I told her we should do a trip to Miami soon, maybe a romantic getaway. She smiled like I was the best husband in the world. But inside, I was cold. I hired a private investigator to follow her. He confirmed everything. She'd meet up with Drew during the day when she said she was at the gallery. They'd go to hotels, sometimes his place. Sometimes they'd just drive around for hours like two teenagers in love. My blood boiled, but I waited because while they were playing house, I was rewriting the script. Quietly, I was transferring assets, liquidating stocks, moving property into trusts with my brother as the beneficiary. I was shifting ownership of my company's shares just slightly enough to avoid any marital claim. Rachel didn't know I was doing it. She was too busy sending money to her muscle-bound Romeo. And then came the day everything changed. One night, I came home early. Rachel wasn't expecting me. I walked through the front door, and there was laughter coming from the kitchen. Not hers. His. Drew Carlson was in my house, wearing my clothes, drinking my whiskey. My hands curled into fists as I stepped into the kitchen, my heart pounding like a war drum. He turned around. Rachel turned pale. Babe, you're home early. This is, But I didn't wait for her to finish. I dropped a file on the counter, a thick manila envelope. She looked confused. What's that? Your betrayal, I said calmly. Signed, sealed, and documented. And then Drew said something that made everything stop. Relax, man. It's not like she took all your money. I smiled, because that one stupid sentence was the biggest mistake he could have made. That one stupid sentence. It's not like she took all your money. Hung in the air like poison. Rachel's eyes widened. Drew, what the hell? But it was too late. He'd said the quiet part out loud. She knew then. She knew the game was up. I leaned against the kitchen counter, letting the silence stretch. My heart wasn't racing anymore. I felt calm. Too calm. Like the storm had already passed. And I was just watching the wreckage float by. I opened the manila envelope and slid the documents out one by one onto the granite counter. Printed screenshots of every wire transfer she made to Drew. Signed copies of my trust documents. My corporate asset filings. The title transfers for our vehicles, no longer under her name. The prenup addendum she forgot she signed last year during a refinance agreement. And most importantly, the proof that her so-called donation wasn't tax-deductible. It was fraud. Rachel just stood there, frozen, her hands trembling, her mouth hanging open, but no words coming out. You want to know the best part? I said, voice low but steady. Every dollar you sent him came from my personal trust. And under Texas law, that trust is protected. Meaning, every penny you stole wasn't community property. It was mine. Drew blinked. Dude, okay, look, maybe this got out of hand, all right? But we didn't mean. I held up a hand. Don't talk. You're in my house, in my clothes, with my wife. The only thing you need to be saying is goodbye. Rachel finally found her voice. Brandon, please, let's talk. I made a mistake, okay? Things got complicated. You were always busy, and I let out a humorless laugh. You think this is about me being busy? You were siphoning money to your boyfriend while I was paying for your gallery dreams. I wasn't too busy, Rachel. I was building a future, one you clearly didn't want. Her eyes filled with tears. But I'd seen enough of those. The fake kind. The kind she used when she wanted something. You've got 10 minutes, I said quietly. Pack a bag and leave. Drew, too. Otherwise, I'm calling the cops and reporting both of you for theft, fraud, and trespassing. Drew opened his mouth to argue, but the fire in my eyes must have convinced him otherwise. He grabbed Rachel's arm. Let's go. She yanked her arm away. You think you're going to walk out of this untouched? You're throwing away everything. I smiled coldly. No, Rachel. You did. And with that, I left the kitchen. I didn't watch them leave. I didn't say another word. I just sat on the couch, picked up the remote, and turned on the news like it was just another Tuesday. Because to me, it was. Later that night, after the house was quiet, I sat in my office and looked over the final pieces of my plan. It wasn't enough to kick them out. Not yet. I wanted this to sting. I wanted them to feel it. Especially Drew. I knew his type. He lived off handouts, flashy online courses, and women like Rachel who wanted adventure. But he'd made one mistake, accepting money Rachel had no right to give. And I knew exactly how to use that. You see, months ago, when I first started getting suspicious, I quietly created a shell company, just a dummy LLC with a name that sounded fancy. Echo Trust Solutions, LLC. I used it to funnel the donation Rachel made into what appeared to be a legitimate grant, which meant every wire transfer from Rachel to Drew was technically a business expense that could be audited. And oh boy, it was about to be. Over the next few days, I had my lawyer send Drew a cease and desist notice claiming he'd accepted fraudulent funds from a protected trust and must return the money or face civil litigation. Then I filed a report with the IRS about unreported income he received from donations. Drew tried calling me, dozens of times. I never answered. He emailed me, "Can we work this out like men?" No, Drew, you don't cheat with another man's wife and then ask to work things out like men. Rachel, on the other hand, she tried a different approach. She came by the house one morning when she thought I'd be at work. I watched her from the upstairs window as she stood there with a box of photos and a coffee cup with my name on it. I didn't go down. She texted me later. "Brandon, I miss you. I was stupid. Please, let's just talk." I stared at that message and remembered all the nights she claimed to be at art shows while she was sleeping in Drew's arms. I replied with one sentence, "You'll hear from my lawyer." And she did. Rachel was served with divorce papers that week. And just like that, our marriage was officially over. But the real revenge? That came slowly, carefully. 2 months later, Drew's influencer account started posting less and less. His gym coaching business shut down. Turns out, when the IRS comes knocking and your bank freezes your account, it's hard to flex online. Rachel, too, started losing her sparkle. The private investigator I kept on retainer showed me photos of her in a rundown apartment complex on the outskirts town. She'd gone from silk sheets and champagne nights to roommates and ramen noodles. It wasn't about making her suffer. It was about watching the truth unfold. About showing her what happens when you betray the one person who truly had your back. And just when I thought it was over, just when the dust was settling, I got a letter in the mail. It was handwritten from Rachel. She said she was sorry. Said she never realized how good she had it. Said Drew left her. And then, at the very bottom of the letter, one final sentence. "Brandon, I think I might be pregnant." I read that line 5 times. My stomach dropped, and then my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer. He said, "We've got a new problem." My heart stopped for a second when my lawyer said those words. "We've got a new problem." I tried to stay calm, but my grip on the phone tightened. "What kind of problem?" He paused. "Rachel's claiming she might be pregnant. She's saying there's a chance the baby is yours." I closed my eyes and let out a breath. Of course she was pulling this card now. She sent me a handwritten letter about it. I muttered, "Yeah, she's trying to use it to delay proceedings. She wants to contest some of the financial restrictions and freeze the divorce assets for the welfare of the child." "But she doesn't even know if it's mine," I said, pacing the room now. She was with Drew. She was with him for months. I barely even touched her toward the end. That's exactly what we'll argue, my lawyer replied. But you'll need to be ready. She's pushing hard, Brandon, and if she can convince the court that it might be your kid, it could stall everything. I rubbed my face, feeling a mix of exhaustion and fury creeping in. What do we do? Two options, he said. Either we push for a paternity test immediately, or you wait, and she uses the time to try to claim more from the estate. She's already taken enough, I growled. Then we act fast. And we did. 2 days later, I sent a formal legal demand for a prenatal paternity test. Rachel tried to stall, claimed she was too stressed, said it could risk the baby, but eventually, under pressure from the court and her own financial desperation, she agreed. The test was scheduled for the following week. Meanwhile, Drew was in hot water of his own. The IRS investigation had dug deeper than I thought. Turns out, Drew had a habit of forgetting to report side gigs and cash payments from women he dated. My little breadcrumb trail of trust fund transfers had opened the door to a full audit, and the man was drowning in back taxes. And just when I thought it couldn't get more ridiculous, Drew had the audacity to email me again. Subject line, let's be civil. The body of the email? Yo, Brandon, I know things got weird, but I never meant for things to go this far. Rachel told me you were cool with helping us out. I thought it was just, like, a financial thing. I didn't mean to hurt you. Anyway, now she's out here saying she's pregnant, and it might be yours. Bro, I'm not trying to get wrapped in all this. Let's just squash it and move on. Peace, Drew. I laughed, out loud, in my office. I wasn't even mad at this point. I was amused. This guy was clueless. And now he was trying to play peacemaker, like we were old high school buddies. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer. It made for excellent evidence. The day of the paternity test came fast. I didn't speak to Rachel. We sat in separate rooms. She looked tired, different. The glamorous version of her was gone. No makeup, baggy clothes, and an anxious twitch in her leg. She didn't say a word to me. I didn't look at her. The test took less than 20 minutes. Then came the wait. Those were the longest 5 days of my life. I didn't know what I'd do if the kid was mine. It wasn't the child's fault, but the idea of being connected to Rachel forever made me sick. I didn't want that. I didn't want any part of her world anymore. On the 5th day, I got the call from my lawyer. It's not yours. I let out the deepest breath I've ever taken. Are you sure? He chuckled. Brandon, the test is airtight. 0% chance. You're clear. I dropped into my office chair, stared at the ceiling, and whispered, Thank God. But that wasn't the end of it. Rachel tried to spin it. Claimed it was a faulty test, then blamed Drew. Said he ghosted her after finding out he might be the father. She begged the court for mercy, claiming she was emotionally unstable, financially lost, and had nowhere else to go. She tried to paint herself as a victim, but the court wasn't buying it. Neither was I. Within 3 months, the divorce was finalized. She walked away with almost nothing. The prenup, the asset restructuring, and the proof of fraud left her with barely enough to cover her legal bills. I kept the house, the cars, the business, everything. Drew, on the other hand, vanished. His accounts went silent. No more shirtless pics. No more protein powder promos. He'd been wiped off the grid by lawsuits and back taxes. But just when I thought I could finally relax, something happened. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was back at work. My team was prepping for a product launch, and I was finally starting to feel normal again, like life was moving forward. Then my receptionist buzzed me. Brandon, there's someone here to see you. She says it's important. Who is it? She won't say, just that it's personal. I hesitated. Then I stepped out of my office and froze. Standing there, hands clasped nervously, looking pale and tired, was Rachel's sister, Lindsay. We hadn't spoken in years. I walked up slowly. Lindsay? Hey, she said softly. I know this is weird, but I need to talk to you. It's about Rachel. What about her? Lindsay glanced around. Not here. Can we go somewhere private? And just like that, the peace I thought I had, was gone. Because whatever Lindsay had to say, it wasn't good. And I had a feeling it was going to change everything. We sat across from each other, in a quiet corner of the cafe down the street. Lindsay hadn't touched her drink. She just kept wringing her hands like they were soaked in guilt. I studied her face. Same piercing green eyes as Rachel, but softer, honest. She finally looked up. I didn't come here to defend Rachel, she said. I know what she did. I know how bad it was. Then why are you here? I asked. She took a breath. Because she's in trouble. Real trouble. And despite everything, I think you're the only person who can do something about it. I raised an eyebrow. Rachel made her choices, and the consequences were hers to face. I get that, she said quickly. But this isn't just about her anymore. It's about you, too. I narrowed my eyes. She leaned forward, voice low. Rachel didn't just send your money to Drew. She was part of something bigger. I blinked. Bigger? What do you mean? Lindsay looked around nervously and pulled out her phone. She opened an email chain, slid across the table. Read the name on that email address. I picked it up and scanned the screen. It wasn't just Drew's name. There were others. One of them stood out, Logan Birch. My blood ran cold. Logan Birch was a known crypto scammer who'd been in the news recently, accused of laundering funds through donations from art foundations and fake influencer programs. You're telling me Rachel was working with him? I asked slowly. She didn't know at first, Lindsay said. At least that's what she told me. She met Drew. He introduced her to some guy named Troy, then Logan. They told her they could turn your money into art-backed NFTs, something about digital ownership and grant for galleries. I felt sick. Rachel hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd unknowingly turned me into a potential front for a laundering scheme. How deep does it go? I asked. I don't know everything, she said, but Rachel's panicking. She thinks the feds are watching her. She even tried to reach out to Logan last week, but he's gone dark, disappeared. My heart pounded. Why tell me this now? Because she made a mess, Lindsay said, eyes pleading. And you're still legally listed as a former business sponsor on one of the projects you used in the scam. If this thing blows up, you might get pulled into it, too. I leaned back in my chair, the air feeling heavier with every passing second. It all made sense now. The sudden desperation, the pregnancy lie, the email Drew sent trying to be civil. They weren't just scared of me. They were scared of what was coming. What does she want? I asked. She wants to talk. Privately. Off the record. Why me? Lindsay's voice cracked a little. Because she knows she can't run. And you're the only one who might still have the power to help or destroy her. I stood slowly, pushing my chair back. I'll think about it, I said. Lindsay nodded and quietly left the cafe. I sat back down and stared at the email chain again. This wasn't over. Not even close. Back at the office, I called my lawyer, filled him in, and asked him to quietly investigate the names I saw. He promised to get on it immediately. Meanwhile, I opened a secure browser and started searching everything I could on Logan Birch, Troy Jennings, and the bogus art NFT projects. The deeper I dug, the worse it looked. Some of the money Rachel transferred had gone to shell companies in the Bahamas. A few linked to cases already under investigation. If the authorities traced it back through Rachel's account, which was joint at the time, the paper trail could lead right back to me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house, lights off, thinking, was I ready to bury her completely? Or did I need to talk to her one last time? Not for her sake, but to protect myself? Around 2 a.m., I made a decision. I sent a message to Lindsay. Tell her I'll meet. One time. One place. No tricks. The next day, I pulled up to the meeting spot, a small park on the edge of the city where no one would recognize us. She was already there, sitting on a bench, sunglasses on, hair tucked in a hoodie. She looked broken, no makeup, pale, thin, not the polished woman I once married. As I approached, she stood up slowly, biting her lip like she wanted to speak, but couldn't. Say what you need to say, I said firmly. She swallowed hard. I didn't know it was a scam, Brandon. I swear to God. Drew said it was legit, that it was an opportunity. I didn't mean to get you involved. You drained 60 grand from our account and lied to my face, I said. That wasn't a mistake. That was betrayal. She winced but kept going. I was stupid, greedy. I thought maybe if I brought in more money, you'd respect me again. I stared at her. It was never about money, Rachel. It was about loyalty. You don't steal from someone who would have given you the world if you just asked. She wiped a tear away, then held out a flash drive. This has everything, she said. Emails, names, records of transfers. I backed it all up when Logan went dark. I thought maybe if I gave it to the feds first, I could make a deal. But if you take it, maybe you can protect yourself. I took the drive slowly, cautiously. I'm not doing this for you, I said. I'm doing this for me. I know, she whispered. I turned to walk away. Then she called out, Brandon? I paused. I really am pregnant, she said softly. It's not yours, but I thought you should know. I didn't turn around. I didn't say a word. I just walked away, the flash drive in my hand, and one thought in my mind. Let them come. I'm ready.